Hi everyone, my name is Myra Gavini, and I am so honored that Maria reached out to me to become a part of her special project in bringing awareness to incompetent cervix. I met Maria on Instagram a few months back. I believe she found me through either hashtags incompetent cervix or cervical insufficiency. I think that this is one of the coolest aspects of social media and Instagram is that people get to come together with commonalities and find others who are walking through a similar journey or story or path as they are. And so I'm just so happy for knowing Maria, knowing her story, and for being a part of this really special project, and for bringing awareness to a condition that women like us have. She has asked me to share a little bit of my story and my baby story and how my life has changed drastically because of this condition. So, once again, my name is Myra. I am a wife, I am a mother, I am a nurse. I have 3 babies. My first is my eldest. Her name is Haven Faith. She is the child that I lost to incompetent cervix. My middle child is my son, my 3-year-old, named Jethro. And my youngest is my second baby girl. Her name is Honor, and she is 1 year old. I lost my eldest, named Haven, almost 5 years ago in 2016, July 22nd, 2016. She'd be 5 this upcoming July. So some background on my story with her. She was my husband and I's first pregnancy ever. We had been married for almost going on 2 years. We were excited. We were ready for this new chapter in our lives. We have been together since we were 13, and so embarking on parenthood and being parents for the first time with our firstborn, I'm sure all of you can imagine the excitement and the happiness and joy and overwhelming emotions that all first-time parents experience. You can name it all, and we felt that. And gosh, I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember it like it was yesterday. So throughout our entire pregnancy, it was otherwise normal. Everything was going smooth, fine. We were seeing a regular OBGYN here in Santa Monica. My husband and I live in West Los Angeles. And so our doctor at the time was just a regular OBGYN from UCLA. UCLA is a really big institution here on the west side, on the west coast of the United States. And our pregnancy was otherwise normal, healthy, and her original due date was October 22nd, 2016. At our 20-week appointment, which is usually when the baby has an anatomy scan, we found out that actually there was something wrong with her heart. So at the time of our ultrasound, we were devastated because our doctor had told us that her heart was missing one of the main chambers that it needs to function adequately and properly. And so if you're unfamiliar with anatomy, your heart has 4 big chambers, and it looked like, based on what the ultrasound was showing, Haven was missing 1, so she only had 3. Therefore, improper blood flow. All her organs were probably not getting blood flow properly. And this just posed for a lot of different things, the prognosis of her life, what her health was going to look like in the future, all the surgeries that she'd need upon birth, and all the following ones that would follow shortly during the early years of her life. So that one appointment, at our 20-week appointment, like, changed us. I remember coming out of that appointment just crying and so scared and overwhelmed with all the different emotions that you can imagine, both my husband and I, just crying, asking God for a miracle, asking him, and just hoping that there was maybe a typo on the screen, that the ultrasound was fuzzy, or the baby wasn't at a good angle, Haven wasn't a good angle. Just basically praying that what we saw was not what we saw. And I just remember that time being so hard. So hard. And I think there was a point, I'm not sure around what weeks I was pregnant, but there was just a certain week after that 20-week appointment that we kind of surrendered to God, and we told him, whatever you give us, you've given us for a reason, and we will accept whatever blessing, whatever task you ask us to take on. We will do it. Guide us, be with us, be in our decisions, show your presence in the details, make yourself known within this child and within every step of the process. And I think the moment that Paul and I decided to surrender, the whole weight was lifted off our shoulders, and it wasn't the prognosis or the life that we anticipated or thought we were going to lead, but we felt that whatever God called us to do, whatever task he asked us to take on, that we would be taken care of, regardless what that looked like. And so we just surrendered, and no matter what, we were going to have this baby. We were going to do our best to take care of her, raise her, and do everything that we could so that her life could be as normal as possible. I know that the doctor was saying that she was going to be getting frequent heart surgeries for her condition. So her condition wasn't specifically diagnosed, just because all the positions that she had at the OBGYN's office, at the perinatologist's office, and at the pediatric cardiologist's office, all her positions were kind of difficult. So there wasn't ever a definitive diagnosis on what kind of heart condition she specifically had. But we did know that she was going to have a heart surgery at birth, a heart surgery again at week 1 or 2 weeks after her birth. The third one would be like when she was a year old, and her last surgery would be like when she was 4 or 5. So she'd be needing 4 heart surgeries after being delivered, and then I think she'd have like yearly or annual heart pediatric checkups with her cardiologist. She'd be on medication her whole life. And then in terms of strenuous activity like sports or anything involving a lot of movement, she'd have trouble in participating because of the inadequate oxygenation in her body. Fast forward to our 24-week checkup. So at this time, we're roughly around like 6 months pregnant, and we had just finished having an appointment with our then perinatologist. So our OBGYN had referred us to a specialist to now take over our care because of the high risk condition and heart defect that she found in Haven. I also want to mention that at this time, we didn't want to know the baby's gender. So this whole time, I thought and felt that Haven was a boy. There was no name yet for a boy, but I thought it was a boy. Paul, this whole time, just knew in his heart that she was a girl. And when she was born, he knew he was right all along. And he actually said her name and told the doctors and the whole healthcare team that, Haven Faith was her name. So we'll get to that later on in the story. But now a perinatologist was seeing us at week 24. And I remember lying on that table, being ready to get up and leave and proceed with the rest of me and Paul's day. But there was just a voice inside of me. I don't know what prompted me to pay attention to this voice or trust in my instinct that day specifically. But the doctor had already left the room, and I remember asking Paul to get the doctor and ask her to come back into the room to check on my cervix. And I'm not sure what this voice was, but I honestly believe that there was some kind of divine intervention in my story, because I don't even know why I would want the doctor to specifically check on my cervix, but I just vividly remember me saying this to Paul. So he calls the doctor back, she comes back in the room, and I just ask her to check my cervix and just assess and see if everything was okay. And she brought out the speculum, I believe is what the tool is to help open your cervix up, or your vagina up. And I just remember this cold feeling suddenly coming over the room, and I felt her energy like completely change, and her face just went white. And her just saying, Paul and Myra, I'm so sorry, but I'm afraid there's more bad news. And at this point, me and Paul are like, what else? Like, what now? And she went on to explain that the baby was already coming out of my vagina, and that her limbs were out of the vaginal canal, and that my cervix was dilated way too soon, and that we had a decision to make right then and there. And in that moment, I think it was from all the shock and fear and everything just fogging up my mind, but I I don't remember well what the condition is, but I remember like hearing about it when I was in nursing school. But at the time, I just couldn't piece everything together. But she just explained that some women in pregnancy develop a condition called incompetent cervix or cervical insufficiency, where the cervix just dilates on its own way ahead of time and when it shouldn't be, and that the baby's weight and position play a factor in the cervix dilating, and it's very rare. 1 in 100 women or pregnancies have incompetent cervix, and that there's no specific way to catch it or to prevent it, and that unfortunately it's just found or seen in ultrasounds, and that we had 3 decisions to make at that moment. 1, we return home and we wait for nature and for the baby just to come on his or her own, because from the way that things looked at that moment, there was nothing she believed she could do to save the baby. So the first choice was either go home and just wait for everything to naturally happen. The second choice was to do an emergency cerclage. So a cerclage is a preventative or an emergent procedure, surgery done for the pregnant woman. And it's basically a stitch that closes the cervix shut so that it doesn't dilate. It prevents preterm labor, preterm delivery, and but based on her findings that day, it didn't look promising because of how out and descended Haven was, that it was more risky to do the surgery than it was to save her. And then the third choice was to go to the hospital, which was down the street, and be on total bed rest in hopes to prevent or delay labor and delivery. And I remember Paul and I not even hesitating, choosing number 3, and us wanting to be medically observed and watched versus going home and not doing all that we could to try and save the baby. We sped down the street, headed to the hospital, the main hospital of UCLA in Westwood, and immediately a series of events occurred. I was on bed rest for a total of 11 days, up in the labor and delivery unit in the antepartum section, the section where women with high-risk conditions in their pregnancy stay and are admitted for medical observation. And I was there for 11 days on bed rest, unable to use the restroom, shower, bathe, get up, walk, anything. And it was the scariest time in my life. It was the scariest time in my life, and I remember the cerclage not being an option in my case. We prayed so hard. I tried my best to stay as flat and as horizontal as I could. And I remember the doctors just wanting her to get to either 28 weeks of gestation or I forget how many grams in weight. But baby Haven decided to come in her own time and in her own way. I started having contractions, I think 2 days before she was born. And she was born on July 22nd, 2016 at 7:23 in the morning. She was 1 pound and 11 ounces and 13 inches long. And she was beautiful. And I held her, praying for a miracle of some sort. That maybe a mistake was made, and that maybe she can come home, and all of these things that unfortunately weren't true in our case. She was alive for almost 4 hours before she peacefully went on her own. Now, a lot of people will ask me why she wasn't able to receive any medical interventions, and because other women who have had preterm labors and deliveries, their child, their babies, some got, to live and survived and went through the NICU and came home eventually and are okay now. What complicated Haven's case was her heart defect. So because she had that heart defect, it made her her case much more complicated and difficult. And because she needed that heart surgery right after birth, she did not meet the weight goal or the age goal that the doctors wanted for us. And so we had to come peacefully to terms with a decision, and that was if she came before she reached that weight and age, that we would let her go peacefully and comfortably. We left later on that day home, and we laid her body to rest in a cemetery 10 minutes away from us here in West Los Angeles. 7 days after she was born. Almost a year later, we were expecting my second child, Jet. I got this time we were expecting a boy, our son, our middle child. His name is Jet. He was born on November 18th, 2017, and by then we had switched and changed our healthcare, changed our doctor, found one of the best in the world, I believe, in high-risk pregnancy, high-risk care, and I had a preventative cerclage placed at 14 weeks. Stayed in the hospital for 1 night for observation and was ordered to be on bed rest from 14 weeks until I delivered. We had bi-weekly checkups in which I was pushed by either my parents or my husband via wheelchair to do weekly scans on the baby and to check my cervix. By the grace of God, we got to 39 weeks and 5 days. My doctor removed my stitch at 37 weeks to try and see if my body would try naturally to go into labor. But it didn't. And I ended up being admitted into the hospital at 39.5. And we ended up having an emergency section because Jet was showing some distress while I was in the hospital. And so he was delivered via C-section on November 18th at around 8:30 in the morning, 7 pounds, 10 ounces, and 21 inches long. And he is my first rainbow baby and my first successful cerclage. And then my second daughter, Honor, was born on November 9, 2019, almost 2 years after me having Jet. I also had a preventative cerclage placed with Honor at also 14 weeks. My doctor stayed the same for both of my recent 2 pregnancies. And with this pregnancy with Honor, he allowed me to work. So I worked up until 20 weeks. So from 14 weeks to 20 weeks, I was able to still work and be active, of course, with limitations and with caution. But for 20 weeks on, I was on bed rest once again. My husband and my parents helping take care of me and helping me with Jet. One of my orders was to not carry anything over 10 pounds, which Jet was. So it was kind of difficult for me to try and spend time with him and bond with him during my pregnancy with Honor, just because there was very limited carrying and holding him the way that I otherwise would if I wasn't pregnant. But Honor arrived safely on November 9th of 2019, and she was healthy. I think I also delivered her around 39 weeks and 5 days. This time, my doctor decided to just leave my stitch in since we talked about and discussed a repeat C-section. And so he didn't want to have me endure discomfort twice. So after having Honor, he removed my cerclage at that time. And so I've had 2 successful preventative cerclages by the same doctor, and I've been blessed to bring home 2 of my 3 children. I want to thank again Maria for including me in this project and for thinking of me and Haven and my other children and allowing me to share a little bit of our story. A lot of people just in general are not familiar with this condition and how kind of common it is and how isolating it can be, especially if it's your first pregnancy or your first loss, or you unsure of successful cerclage stories or other women who have been able to bring home their children from getting a cerclage placed. Just the whole condition and topic in and of itself is scary and overwhelming and can feel defeating. And so I feel very privileged to have a space and a say in the stories of my children and in my pregnancies. And that though I lost my first baby and I miss her and I wish every single day she was here, that God and her have decided to bless Paul and I with 2 more siblings and 2 healthy children, and I see through them both every day characteristics I believe to be my daughter Haven. And I just feel so blessed despite my loss, and I am just so grateful to be a part of this very important project and to raise awareness to the world, to other women who are expecting, to other parents who have endured loss. I just want to say that you are not alone. You are not alone, and that there are so many of us that feel like we're alone walking through this. And I remember those nights, those days, those weeks, those months that felt like years and lifetimes of feeling like I was alone, and I wasn't. I have found others like me walking through a similar story, path, journey, who have endured very, very, very similar stories and losses, and to come together to talk about our condition, to talk about our losses, to talk about our cerclages, to talk about bed rest, and to talk about high-risk pregnancies, and to talk about rainbow children is powerful. And it is so important to talk about things like this so that others know that they are not alone in what they walk through, and that there are so many just waiting to use their voice and be heard and speak out and share and talk about this. And I am just so thankful that Maria allowed me to be a part of this, and to help spread awareness in a condition that is not looked over or talked about, and it should be, because it changed my life, my world forever. And if you're watching this, I'm sure that IC has also touched you in some way. So thank you, Maria. And I hope you all are following her and her story and her Instagram at IC Mama Army. Thank you, everyone.